It was early Saturday morning on Memorial Day weekend, and I was catching the 8:50 a.m. ferry from Kingston to Edmonds. I estimate that this $18 ride for both me and my Jeep saved me about 170 miles and better than 3 hours of driving to go around. The whole experience was easy and convenient, and I would recommend it to anyone. Leaving the Olympic Peninsula a day early would allow me to visit the small seaside city of Anacortes, a place I had to leave off my original plan. Anacortes was a delightful little place where I would get a chance to not only get some photography in, but also get my first unobstructed view of Mount Baker. After my visit to Anacortes, I headed north to the northern side of Mount Baker. I had some sunrise hiking and photography planned for this area, and now I could set myself up for an easy ride in the morning to the trailhead. Given the holiday weekend, campsites were scarce. After a number of false attempts, I was fortunate to find an open area on a forest road off the Mount Baker Highway. This dispersed campsite would be more than enough. Waking up at 4:50 a.m. to a chilly but dry morning, I quickly packed up and was off for the day. I only had a 13-mile drive to get to the Artist Point trailhead, where I planned to hike and get sunrise photos of both Mount Baker and Mount Shuksan. What I quickly noticed as I ascended the required 3,700 feet was that the snow cover was still quite heavy. I quickly realized this would be a problem. It didn't take long before reaching the Mount Baker ski area to have my day's plan go completely sideways. The road was closed. There was not going to be any hiking or sunrise photographs of Mount Baker. Happily, the reflection shot of Mount Shuksan from Picture Lake was accessible, and here is that shot. My morning plans were dead, and it wasn't even 7 a.m. yet, so I needed a new plan for the day. After breakfast, I decided to head to another seaside city, this time to Bellingham. I was met with another delightful harbor setting where I was able to enjoy a peaceful Sunday morning stroll with my camera. Coming to the midpoint of my planned trip, I had previously booked 2 nights at the Sumas Lodge starting tonight, but check-in wasn't until 3 p.m., so it was time to improvise. I wanted to get some dirt under the tires. Searching Gaia, I found a forest road and decided to explore with no destination in mind. The road, which gently climbed, was reasonably maintained, but there were some sketchy areas of potholes along the way. Upon hitting a fork in the road, I decided to head right, the downhill section, chasing the sound of flowing water. Eventually I reached a river and a bridge that was closed. Here I decided to park, pull out my camping chair, and put my feet up on the wooden guardrail in the middle of the bridge overlooking the flowing river. It was wonderful. Later, I headed back to Sumas and checked into the lodge, really a restaurant with some nice rooms above. This was a planned recovery stop. I would spend 2 nights just relaxing with a hot shower, a soft bed, and food and beer just downstairs.
In 4.5 miles at the roundabout, take the second exit on East Bend.
The sun was out and the temperatures finally felt like a real spring day. I was headed south, but my first stop was for breakfast at a small diner and gas, although I didn't have far to travel. Today would begin my real exploration of the North Cascades, which would take place over the next 5 days by way of the famed North Cascades Highway, or Route 20, the home to the North Cascades National Park. I would travel from west to east, starting from the town of Sedro-Woolley and ending in Winthrop. I had planned to do only a small portion of the 145 miles each day, giving me time to explore and enjoy this beautiful area. Today I would spend some time exploring the southeast side of Mount Baker. I had 2 activities planned for the day. First, travel some forest roads into the Mount Baker Forest Wilderness and look for Baker Hot Springs, and then go kayaking on Baker Lake from tonight's campground. After a short trek on Route 20, I turned north onto Baker Lake Road. It wouldn't be long before I got to see great views of both Mount Shuksan and Mount Baker. I would then turn onto a National Forest Development Road in search of the Baker Hot Springs. This forest-lined, narrow, potholed road climbed about 600 feet to the area where the hot springs were marked on the map. However, I couldn't find any trail to get to them a couple of 100 feet below. Satisfied with the ride itself and not wanting to go bushwhacking into the forest, I decided to head to my second activity and enjoy the sunshine and warmth of the day. Pulling into the Horseshoe Cove campground, I found my site just 100 yards or so off the shores of Baker Lake, along with a well-established beach. Here I inflated my kayak and got into the water. Expecting cold, mountain-fed water, to my surprise the water was warm and swimmable. Maybe it was fed by the hot springs in the area. I don't know. It was, however, a beautiful place to kayak. As I paddled out to the center of the lake, I was met by another surprise, a view I could not see from the shore. Both Mount Shuksan and Mount Baker were featured in the scene. Unfortunately, the GoPro wasn't set up to deal with the dynamic range of the scene, so the snow-capped mountains are blown out in the video here. But just let me say, this was one of the most beautiful experiences I have ever enjoyed. I really wish I had captured it so that I could enjoy it for the years to come. After the wonderful day I spent on Baker Lake, I was ready for another exciting day. The weather was again beautiful, and I was only driving 24 miles on Route 20 today. I was excited for today's activity, a 3.5-mile, 1,800-foot elevation hike up to the Cascade Pass to do some photography. This was one of the most highly recommended hikes on my list. Upon reaching the town of Marblemount, I took the turnoff onto Cascade River Road, a 23-mile road that would get me to the trailhead. After several miles, the road turned from pavement to dirt, and with every additional mile it became more rugged and wonderful, at least until I reached mile 18. Here, I was met with a familiar surprise. The road was closed. Even if I could hike the distance from here, I was 5 miles away from the trailhead. That was adding 10 miles to the hike, making it a 17-mile day. I was not ready for a 17-mile hike with a loaded camera bag. I was very disappointed. Given my campground for the night was directly off Cascade River Road, and not wanting to cover territory I would get to the next day, I spent the rest of the day looking for photographs locally. The only grace to the day was the opportunity to offer a stranded driver some gas from my spare cans so he could get back on the road. Otherwise, it was a very quiet day. Waking up to another glorious spring day, I packed up camp and headed down Route 20 to my next destination. Today my activities would be focused right within tonight's campground located at the Colonial Creek Campground on Lake Diablo. Here I would take a short hike on the Thunder Creek Trail and then kayak on Diablo Lake itself, a highlight of the trip. Today I entered into the heart of the North Cascades National Park, and I would not be disappointed. With every mile, the scenery got better and better. Given that I only had to travel 25 miles to the campground, I decided I wouldn't be in any hurry. I was going to enjoy the sights around me. In fact, once entering the park, I must have stopped every mile or two to take some photographs. Upon reaching the campground, I found a place to park and started the Thunder Creek Trail hike. It was only 3.5 miles round trip and far easier than I expected as it tracked beside the Thunder Creek. Although a pleasant walk, it wasn't as scenic as I was hoping. My afternoon centered around kayaking the Diablo Lake. Known for its turquoise hue, this man-made reservoir is simply beautiful and well worth anyone's time. As you can tell from the video, unlike the smooth and silky waters I experienced on Mount Baker Lake, Diablo was choppy, especially on the north side of the lake, where it was much more open to the wind. Regardless, when the sun stayed out, the kayaking was spectacular. And yes, this water was frigid cold, so you definitely didn't want to fall in. My journey today started early as I departed from the campground, which sat at an altitude of about 1,100 feet. From there, I would continue to head east on Route 20 for a 50-mile drive down the North Cascade Highway and take in some of the most beautiful mountainous landscapes I had ever driven through. I was headed for the mountains in the Okanogan-Wenatchee National Forest. I planned on staying at a dispersed campsite located just 2 miles beyond Hart's Pass at 6,400 feet, and then hopefully hike up to Tatty Peak at 7,300 feet. Yes, I was worried about the snow-covered trails interrupting that plan. Some 20 plus miles into the trip, at an elevation of about 4,000 feet, I started to find the terrain around me still covered in snow. I would max out at 5,548 feet before descending and reaching the town of Mazama. From Mazama, I had a 21-mile trip to my final destination and a 4,200-foot climb. Starting out on pavement, the road would turn into a steep forest road for the last 13 miles to Hart's Pass. The road steadily climbed, and in some sections was nothing more than a narrow shelf road. As I got above the tree line, I was pretty certain the road would be closed at some point, or the trails would be covered, so I scouted for alternate campsites along the way. Sure enough, just 2 miles short of my destination and only 200 feet of elevation left, snow covered the road, making it impassable. Once again, this would be a short day, but this time I at least had a great view to enjoy. Backtracking a few miles, I grabbed a wonderful dispersed campsite and enjoyed the somewhat sunny day, knowing it would be a cold night at this elevation. This was going to be my last day in the North Cascades. My original plan was to head up to Slate Peak before going into the town of Winthrop. Unfortunately, with the road to Slate Peak closed, visiting Winthrop was the only thing I had to do today. Winthrop is a charming town built around an old Western theme. Certainly a draw for tourists, but at least during my visit, it wasn't overwhelmed with people. I enjoyed spending a few hours in the town before heading off back into another section of the Okanogan-Wenatchee National Forest, just northeast of Winthrop, to find a camp spot for the night. Having coordinates from one of my favorite overlanders, Chris, from the channel Venture Forward, I pretty much knew where I was headed. Upon reaching the campsite, which was nicely tucked away from any traffic, I quickly realized the winds would make for another cold night at this elevation. Having seen a few other options along the way, I decided to head back to a little lower elevation. The alternate site was ideal and nicely located next to a pond with a lot of bird activity. This site also offered me some wonderful photography opportunities during the late afternoon, including some beautiful wildflowers. The wind, however, made for some tricky photography. This was a good way to wrap up my visit to the North Cascades and to get ready for the last leg of my trip, which included the grand peaks of Mount Rainier and Mount St. Helen.